Good almost afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Accomplices for Justice. This is, if you can believe it, 17, episode 17. Uh, so welcome, everybody. We really appreciate you being here. You can find all of the data and details on Accomplices for Justice at our website, which is opendoorjudaism.org. That's opendoorjudaism.org. We'd love your support there. But more importantly, here we are today. We are Reverend Dr. Wylie Hughes, who is the senior pastor at Orchard Park Presbyterian Church. A admittedly mostly white church. And I am Rabbi Jonathan Freirich, a sort of rabbi without portfolio, formerly rabbi of Temple Beth Zion here in Buffalo, New York, now running Open Door Judaism and collaborating with Accomplices for Justice. And look out, Pastor Hughes and I are pulling together a discussion series supported by Humanities of New York. We won a grant, and that'll be coming out in November. We will give you details as we get them. Also, one other thing, I am teaching a class on Talmud starting next week. So online, it's going to be 3 o'clock on Tuesdays for 4 out of the 5 next Tuesdays. For some reason, the first Tuesday in November, we'll be doing something else, so we're not doing it then.
Be a
But
bit busy.
yeah, so if you're interested, you can also contact me for that. It's through another organization, but I'd love everyone and anyone to join in. We'll be looking at this wonderful book, teacher of mine named Rabbi Amy Scheinerman, and it's called The Talmud of Relationships, and we'll be using her as a guide. So lots of fun. All right, enough promo. So today we are continuing our talk of what we have begun to categorize as living with soul. And does that mean being a liberal, for lack of for uh, sort of big context? And we're last week, 2 weeks ago, we got into this through a much more controversial book, Professor McWater's Woke Racism, which only mostly kind of triggered Pastor Hughes.
Mostly kinda.
Um, but for all sorts of justifiable reasons, and we'll see. I'm working on beginning conversation with Professor McWater. He is on sabbatical, so understandably he's not wanting to be contacted. We respect people's sabbatical. Everybody should get them, not just professors. So today we're looking at Adam Gopnik's A Thousand Small Sanities, The Moral Adventure of Liberalism. And it's not a new book, but it is a book that starts out with the sort of this initial question of Adam Gopnik is talking to his teenage daughter in the wake of the 2016 election and trying to justify the liberal with a small L democratic project that still yielded a President Trump.
Hmm.
So that's our setup for the book. Our setup for today, however, is slightly different because, we don't just go by the book. Despite us being a pastor and a rabbi, uh, we are not bound by such uh, literalist approaches. Instead, we're going to start uh, with this real question. So Reverend Hughes and I had a really interesting conversation earlier this week, and because Pastor Hughes was interested in the question about anti-Zionism and Zionism, and we started with this idea that out of the civil rights movement in the 1960s arose this declaration, uh, and the historical context for that is important, which is that white Americans had been telling Black Americans for years, no, 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 be patient, and it'll get better. And the entirely justifiable African American response to that is, I don't need to be patient to be regarded as a person. My personhood should be axiomatic from the start. I have a right to exist, and there's no patience involved.
Mm.
And that is needs to be the beginning of the conversation about anti-Zionism and Zionism as well, which is I have a right to exist.
Mm.
That's non-negotiable. Then let's talk.
Mm-hmm.
If the premise for the conversation starts with you don't have a right to exist yet, as it did with African Americans in the 1960s or the
Mm.
1970s and the 1980s or 2024, or if somebody is an immigrant, they don't have a
Mm.
right to exist, or if
Right.
somebody is a woman, they don't have a right to exist. We have to take that off the table. The conversation needs to start with we all have a right to exist. And if we start there, then we're having, from Gopnik's perspective, a conversation in the sphere of what we would call liberal democracy with lowercase letters all around.
Right.
Not to be confused with all sorts of liberal conservative
Capital
disagreements.
L liberal. Yeah.
Well, no, no. I would so let's start with like three different liberals.
Oh my gosh.
Right? There's this thing that we live in, which, if we are to describe it as political scientists or philosophers or anthropologists or
Right.
sociologists, we're going to call a liberal democracy.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Within a liberal democracy, there are going to be arguments about how to go forward. And those
Mm.
arguments are often going to be between people who want things to change more quickly and things who want things to change more slowly. And those are
Right.
going to be conversations between quote unquote lowercase liberals and lowercase conservatives. And then, so that's liberal and conservative takes on how to make progress in a liberal democracy.
Right.
And then there are all of the capital letter designations, which include things like I am a liberal, whatever that
Mm.
means, and is usually cast as an aspersion, right? So, for example, there's a whole cohort in the public sphere nowadays who are calling people Marxists and
Yeah.
liberals and socialists, and it is uh, derogatory,
Yeah.
and doesn't actually say anything of substance either. So, if we're going to start with this, everybody has a right to exist. We're also going to start with three premises, and this is where we're going to start our conversation, because I think the question is, can we agree on these three premises?
Mm.
If everybody has a right to exist, everybody has equal rights. Every individual has equal rights to every other individual. To go forward in society, society's central platform should be decreasing cruelty. We should say our society exists primarily for less cruelty to each other and to others. And then finally, platform number three, context counts, or as we've come to agree on, we are all in the same storm, but we're not in the same boat.
Mm.
I was talking with somebody yesterday, and I said, "Look, you know, I may be Jewish, and I have all sorts of issues about what it means, how the challenges of being Jewish, but in American society in 2024, I'm still a white guy."
Mm.
And as a white guy in American society, regardless of other issues, my boat is probably nicer than most people's.
Mm. Mm. You sound like Jane Elliott.
Okay, tell me how.
Have you heard Jane Elliott before?
Mm-mm.
Wow. Okay. Wow. I don't even want to spoil it for you. When
Okay.
you in your free time, YouTube Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott has been a sort of social commentator, in an outspoken social activist in the anti-racism sphere. She's been doing workshops since the 60s. Uh, when it was unpopular for white women, right, to speak out against racism in the early 60s. We're talking about 1960, right?
Wow. Okay, cool.
Uh,
I will look.
so check her
Clearly
out.
there's a gap in my education.
Yeah, check her out. She has this sort of her um, her icebreaker when she does her workshops or her lectures. Her icebreaker is always raise your hand if you want to be black, right? And when no one when no one raises their hand, she says, "Wait a minute. I'm asking you to raise your hand if you want to be black, and you're not raising your hand. What does that mean? That means that you know that there's a difference. You know that you have a privilege being not black, and you know that it is not good to be black in many circumstances in our country. So the question is, why haven't you done anything about it?"
Mm.
And that's how she starts her workshops. And her workshops usually end in, as she calls it, white tears. Uh, People get upset and they get in their feelings, and she doesn't really care. She's that kind of person. Anyway,
Well,
check
that's
her out.
very Robin. So Robin DiAngelo follows in her footsteps in this
Oh
regard.
yes, oh yes. Robin DiAngelo would be sort of like a Jane Elliott light. Robin DiAngelo, uh, she's nicer. She's nicer about it than Jane Elliott. Jane Elliott would just curse you out.
All right. So
Anyway,
here's the question for you, Pastor Hughes, looking
okay.
at all this stuff. You told me that you read Adam Gopnik's book in two lights. One was
Yes.
sort of uh, in recovery from your our interplay with John McWhorter,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah.
and one of them was more critical.
Yes.
So so what what did you get from both readings, or
Well,
what did you get? What was different from both reading in each reading?
the difference is, and gosh, McWhorter talks about emotionalism a lot in woke racism. He talked about how emotionalism sort of clouds the judgment. And so I'll admit, I read the Gopnik book initially with so much emotionalism. Um, and I read it quickly. I mean, I was like, boom, 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 like, oh man, this is great. Oh, I felt validated. I felt heard. I felt supported. I felt like, yo, I'm on the right track. This man gets me. This is the perfect rendition of liberalism, and oh, I'm so proud to be a liberal. Thank you, Adam Gopnik. And then I got toward maybe the last third of the book, and I realized, and wait a minute, I have disengaged my critical mind, which is sort of, so then I had to go back and read it again and sort of take some of my emotion out of it. And I think the difference between the two readings is that I was able to see a bigger picture. Um, I still love the book. I still love what he tried to accomplish. I love it, but I noticed some of the shortcomings in some of his rhetoric or his logic. Um, or but let me not say shortcomings, but I felt that there were some aspects of his presentation that I wasn't satisfied. That's a better word. I wasn't satisfied. I wasn't satisfied with his notion about incremental change versus revolution, right? I wasn't satisfied. I think he was very quick to avoid revolution and to say, oh, revolution is not the way. We should do this incrementally. And when I heard the second time, when I read him saying incremental change, I I remember the words of Dr. King and other civil rights activists 40, 50 years ago who said, how long must we wait? How long? Right? We've been waiting for 150 years. How much longer are we supposed to wait? So I wasn't satisfied with that. And another thing I wasn't satisfied with was his sort of and the rabbi disagrees with me, but the lionization of liberalism in general, right? He's making it out to be so much more, and sort of glossing over some of its shortcomings. But that, that's debatable. I'm not really. I don't. That's inconsequential. But that first thing was what really captured my attention.
So I think we need to dig into this, because I think the revolution versus incrementalism is really important,
Yeah.
because I think I think at the heart of our challenges is how massive systems change is, and and how the system seems so intractable on the one hand, and when confronting the intractability of the system, we have a tendency to say the system sucks.
Mm,
And Gopnik is trying to say, hey, wait a second, the system is better than anything we've come up with yet.
mm, right.
And this is hard to argue with on a lot of fronts because of course, uh, you know, your and my conversation at, in this moment in 2024 is not a conversation that we could imagine in the same way in 1994 or 1964.
Indeed, indeed. I think, I
And
think, I think. Well, not to cut you off, but I think,
no, please.
but I think he, yes, he says that this is the best system we got, and it's almost like, yes, it's the best system we got, but it's not the best system we can. It's not the system that we need, but it's the best we got. And I think one of the reasons why it's the best that we have, but it's still not the best, is it's an overemphasis on individualism, I think.
So
Um,
this by the way, preview for this, our next book covers it, gets us right
yes,
in this.
yes, it does.
So
Yes, it does. I've taken a peek
so
in it. Yeah,
yeah, our next book on free speech,
yeah,
um, with fearless speech, I can't recommend more highly. I've also
yeah.
just begun it, and the question of individualism, of individual rights versus collective fate,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And which trumps which, and of course, right to do what to whom, as
Mm.
opposed to right to be free from
Yes.
what and from whom.
Yes.
It's amazing
Yes.
how powerful those prepositions are.
Yes, it is.
That being said, I still think, and again, we get stuck in the system's great, how do we make it better? And then suddenly we feel like everybody's dragging their feet.
Right.
And and I had a conversation this morning about how nonprofits do good or don't do good here in Buffalo, for example.
Mhm.
And Buffalo is an incredible microcosm of the intractability of systems that should be so much better. And here we have systems that have stuck it out despite them being bad for so long. So that, in the wake of the worst local community tragedy, the massacre on May 14th, 2022, which is now over 2 years ago.
I can't believe it.
It is over 2 years ago. We are dealing with almost, you know, 30 months ago.
Yeah.
Next, it is 29 months this yes 2 days ago.
Mm.
Everybody said there's going to be tons of money flowing into the east side of Buffalo. It's going to transform Cold Spring. We're going to see, where's the money?
Where's the transformation?
Where's the transformation? Where's the community investment? Where has it gone? Clearly, somebody is going on vacation on that money,
Clearly.
but it is not the people living in the neighborhood of Tops on Jefferson.
Right. They're not even being heard.
And what that illustrates is exactly what the frustration that you're talking about.
Mm.
That incremental change hasn't gotten us far enough.
Right.
So, and Gopnik points out over and over again, revolution hasn't gotten us any farther either. That
Yeah.
what he points out is, pick a late 19th or mid all the way from the late 19th century all through the end of the 20th century, pick a revolution and he will show you historically a system that became less just, a system that became less fair, a system that ended in more oppression than even it started with.
Mm.
And yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. He said he. Yeah. I again, he glosses over some things, and I would even say, with just within the context of America, we haven't really had a revolution since the so-called American Revolution. We haven't really
Oh no,
had a
we have.
revolution. I wouldn't. I don't know.
The Civil War was a revolution.
This. Ah.
It remember we looked at the history of the Second American Republic, right?
Yes, yes, we did.
This is Manisha Sinha's argument,
Yes,
and her argument is pretty clear that what came out of the Civil War was a new American Republic. It
that's
didn't
true.
last long.
That's true.
It didn't last long. The counter-revolution succeeded much more than the revolution.
Yes. Okay. I completely understand. Yes, I got you. I
So the
got you.
13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments changed this country, and then all those changes were undone. So the Supreme Court took the due process of the 14th Amendment, which is meant to protect you and me, and turned it into protections for corporations.
But then that brings me back to my original critique. Oh my gosh. Okay, if the revolutions don't work and the incremental stuff doesn't work, then what are we supposed to do? You know what I mean?
Okay, so Gopnik would say, channeling Gopnik here,
Okay.
without the Civil War, without the Second American Republic, without the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, then we don't get the second reconstruction of the Civil Rights Movement, because then you don't get the Warren
Right.
Court
Right.
reinterpreting the 14th and
Right.
15th Amendments
Right.
to bring about Brown versus Board of Education, to undo Plessy versus Ferguson, to undo all of those things that the counter-revolution worked on from 1870 forward.
Yeah.
Without the system continuing to be used to correct the bull crap that is that is put forward by white supremacist America.
Yeah. Well, uh, and I think therein lies the issue. I think this
Mhm.
it's always, one of us, an African scholar once said, you cannot expect a system that was designed against you to be the same system that saves you. Okay,
So
so you
yes,
we so the system just, it's not that it didn't work, it worked exactly the way it was supposed to work.
well,
Right? And so,
except that Lincoln reinterpreted the system
of
to try to
course,
do something differently with it, and
right.
then
And
at the core of our Dr. King Malcolm X argument is Malcolm X saying, stop using the master's tools.
that's right. That's
Right.
right.
So Dr. King also reinterprets the Declaration of Independence in a way that Jefferson never intended it,
Right. Right.
or in a way that Jefferson only dreamed might be possible
Right.
in the most charitable interpretation of Jefferson we could offer.
But if we're going to argue outcome, right? If we're going to argue outcome, which Gopnik does, he argues that revolutions don't work because look what happened, right? Look what happened to the revolution. In
Well,
in in
but the world of the assassination of RFK and MLK in the late 60s is better now.
I would argue that, but yes, it's better in some cases. It is better in some cases, yes. But I believe that the system is still the same. I believe the system is still the same because we're still having the same response. Change happens, grand sweeping changes happen, and the same system works to counter those changes, right?
We're
Even now.
so okay. Agreed, 100%. So the difference between the Reagan administration of 1980 through 1988, or 1981 through 1989 to be
Mhm.
specific, and the Trump administration of 2017 to 2021. The Reagan counter-revolution was hidden. It was behind the scenes.
Oh yeah.
So Reagan undermined labor unions.
Mhm.
Reagan undermined civil rights, and not Reagan personally, but the Reagan
The
administration
administration. Yeah.
and the counterculture reaction of the 1980s to everything that came before.
Right.
right? The Reaganomics undid so many potential goods for the sake of the fantasy of trickle-down economics, which never
Right.
worked, right? Trickle-down economics could basically be called slaveholding economics.
Oh yeah, sharecropping.
So, so it wasn't anything new. It was something old being done again. You know, the corruption of the Reagan administration, Iran-Contra, all of the other things going on took a while to come to light.
Yeah, it did.
4 years of Trump was being evaluated in real time.
Mm.
Uh, Ronald Reagan never did what former President Trump did this past weekend, which is stop talking and dance for 35 minutes. Uh,
Would have never dreamed of it.
well, no, because Reagan's handlers would have never allowed it.
Never allowed it. And Reagan's an
Right?
actor. He he would have probably done it better.
Well, you are lowering the bar is very
The
low
price is
here.
very low. That's true.
Uh, you know, old white men dancing is not a high bar to beat. So in any event, we see more now than we ever have. And I think if
Yes.
we're looking at progress, difficult, incremental, terrible as it has been, the progress between the campaign, the George H.W. Bush campaign, the overtly racist campaign of 1988, when, Dukakis was Willie Horton,
Yeah. Wow. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
An overtly racist campaign that worked, but it didn't just work among the the radical right wing zealots. It worked among the general population.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now move that, right? 2024 is 36 years later. And in those 36 years, there is no question of the overt racism coming from the Trump Vance campaign.
Mm-hmm.
It is clear. They are not even hiding it.
Saying
And
the quiet things out loud.
the overt sexism,
Mm.
the overt misogyny, all of these things. So I think you are right. These things have always been there. The system has not solved them. Only now we get to decide clearly about them.
Yeah.
And Chris says, but in 2016, many supported those things. Many supported the misogyny and the
Oh yeah.
racism. Well,
And they've
yes.
supported now.
So interestingly enough, here's uh so Dr. Atchison raised this question this week. Are we really going to blame black men for not electing Kamala Harris, God forbid?
Oh, that's disgusting.
Right?
Uh,
Because now we're saying that Harris is not appealing to men in general, white men in general, but really that the people who quote unquote ought to be supporting Harris who are not are African American men. I mean, this is crazy.
yeah. And it doesn't help that
Regardless of the truth of the statement, it is crazy
it's
a
crazy.
crazy analysis to be.
It's crazy. And in light of, former President Obama having this talk with black men, using his platform to berate us yet again, um, it's a circus, man. It's a circus. And I'm very disappointed. I'm very disappointed. I am very disappointed.
So
Uh,
okay, so let's, because I think Obama's take is an important place to go on this particular aspect. As the political voice of liberalism of the last, 18 years,
yeah.
16 years,
Yeah.
20 years, depending on how you look at it, right? From the 2004 campaign where he entered the public eye. So 20 years.
Right.
20 years of Obama offering a small a lowercase L liberal take on things.
Mm-hmm.
Yet again, you said, because Obama took up the conservative stance, the Daniel Patrick Moynihan stance, that it was something in the behavior of African American men that was hurting African American families, as opposed to a system.
Yeah, blaming the victim.
So so that's 2008,
Yeah,
2009, 2010.
yeah.
Now here we are in 2024, and of course I can only say this. I mean, think about our society, Pastor Hughes. I can only say this in conversation with you. God forbid I were to say this in public as a white guy.
Hmm.
Uh, you know, former President Obama gets up and says, with this talk to rally African American men. So let's talk about our percentage differences here.
Hmm.
We are anticipating, let's be poli-sci Nick moments here. We're talking shaved percentages, right? Something between the numbers I've seen, and recognizing that all statistics are made up on the spot, but this one I vaguely remember. Somewhere between 90 and 95% of African American men voted for Biden in 2020.
Hmm.
And the polling now shows only 75% of African
Right,
American men supporting Vice President Harris.
right.
I could try to make up a number of how many people that is in the swing states, and whether or not that number would actually swing Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania. It's
Right.
not, I can tell you one thing, it's unlikely to swing Arizona or Nevada.
No, it's not.
It might swing Georgia.
It did swing Georgia. It might do it again, but yeah.
So okay, from Obama's perspective, that's why. Because Obama figured the people that he might be able to sway the most are African American men. So I ask you, as an African American man, do you believe that?
No, I don't. No, I don't. I think it's BS. I think it's a load of BS. I think it's gerrymandering, and it's wrong gerrymandering. Okay, when you're gerrymandering for someone, the least you can do is appeal to their sensibility. Something that one of my elders at church says, you have to appeal to their emotions. You appeal if you want to convince someone of something, you have to start with the heart, and then the logic follows, right? Some people are so attached to their identity. I mean, so many people have uh, uh, their identity is so wrapped up in their politics, and they don't know why. They don't have a rational reason for it, and so you have to appeal to their heart. You have to appeal to their emotions if you're going to gerrymander to somebody, if you're going to gerrymander to the uneducated country dweller in coal country Kentucky, you're not going to give them any kind of rational, you're not going to give them statistics. You're going to say, we're going to bring coal back because that's going to get them stirred up. Yeah, we'll finally get our jobs back. If you want to appeal to black men, then you have to appeal to what makes black men tick. What did Biden say that got the black male vote? He appealed to black people. He said, I am going to get you jobs because I understand that your unemployment hurts this country. I believed it. That's why I voted for Biden, because I said, here's what I'm talking about. You're acknowledging the fact that 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 black men are valued in this country enough to say that you getting a job is good for the country, which is something that we haven't heard before. We hadn't heard before.
So I'm very enthusiastic about this particular analysis, Pastor Hughes, because this is very much at the heart of what Gopnik is saying, that
Mm,
liberalism is about the heart,
yes.
that it's about the emotional argument. And
Yeah.
this has, and I would say this has been a fundamental flaw in Obama thinking versus
Yes.
Biden thinking.
Yes.
And so here, Chris asked the question about in 2016, right? What's the difference between 2016 and 2024? So the real question is Harris making a Biden emotional case or an Obama Clinton intellectual case?
Yeah. And and I believe when it matters, it's an intellectual case. It's almost purely intellectual. Um, which you can be critical of it, but then to criticize it is to be anti-intellectual. So it's tricky. It's tricky. I think
I don't think so. I think softening each other's hearts is is intellectually sound,
okay. I can Yep.
providing we do it in a principled manner.
Yes, yes. Okay. I think what Obama was trying to do was just, was right, was good. Okay. I'm not okay. What Obama said to black men was so true. He did not tell a single lie. Okay. So I'm not bristling at what he said. I'm bristling at the fact that he thought that was going to convince us to vote for Kamala. That's what makes me angry because I'm like, you're appealing to our reason. Yes, what you're saying is true. Yes. However, if you're trying to convince us to vote a certain way, you totally missed the boat. You pissed us off. Because I got pissed off.
And this is one of the challenges that I find in the Jewish community.
Mm,
So I don't have conversations about politics with one of my cousins
mm,
because he is he's a modern Orthodox Jew. He's serious. He is a zealous Zionist, and we're not going to talk about the shades of Zionism right now.
mm.
Uh, and he and there's and when asked about Kamala Harris, when asked about Vice President Harris, my cousin said, "Yeah, but I passed the bar on the first try." And so the argument here is not how can you possibly, as a Jewish American, vote for Trump, but all the reasons why Harris won't get his vote.
Yeah,
That's not a conversation.
it's not a conversation at all.
And, especially not one to have on Facebook because
Right. No, you don't
so
want to do that.
so here we have these divisions. And the only way to bridge them is to create again sort of this common emotional cause.
Yeah.
This we are fellow travelers, and how do we trust on an emotional basis that this person gets me as a fellow traveler?
And that's to me, that is something that the GOP does very well for their constituencies. They do it very well. Trump understands his constituencies. He understands he's a populist. He understands what his people want to hear. He does not guarantee, well, he guarantees them that they'll get it. He has no intention of giving it to them. Everybody knows that. But he understands what makes them tick. He knows this. He trumps up the fear. He knows they're afraid because he made them afraid. He stirred the pot because he understands that that's what they need. That's what they want. That's what they demand. But the Democrats don't do that. They don't take advantage of that at all.
Well, but okay, pushing back on that, it's easy to make people afraid. It's easy to terrify people.
Yeah.
Terror is effective.
Yeah.
Fighting terror, right? The war against
That's easy.
terrorism is
It's an easy
so
sell.
is so difficult
Yeah.
because terror is so easy.
Yeah. It's an easy sell. That's not what I'm saying though.
No, no,
I'm
no. But so how do we make an emotional argument for how do we bridge that emotional gap? You know, to go all biblical on us, how do we soften Pharaoh's heart?
You soften Pharaoh's heart by at least having it. Lie to me. Lie. Lie to me. Lie to me. This is my critique of Gopnik. This is another one of my critiques of Gopnik. Don't don't expect me to support you in your liberalism if your liberalism doesn't really help me at all, right?
Mm.
It does not help me. Okay. So if you want me to support you in your campaign, then the very least appeal to the things that appeal to me. Appeal to the things that I like and that I want, that I need. Appeal to me. Okay. I'll give you the prime example. If and I mean, I know who I'm going to vote for. I've done all my research, all the research that I can tolerate at this point. At this point, I'm over it. I already know what I'm going to do. It would have taken me less time to come to that conclusion if my candidate would have just said from the beginning, we hear you, black man. We know that you need jobs. We know that a generation of black men are coming out of prison and they can't find jobs either. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to fight to remove some of these barriers to job applications. I'm going to fight to take this felon thing off of your job application so that if you are an ex-con, you can still get a job to get back into society. I'm going to give you a tax credit if you want to start a small business. I'm going to, I'm going to strengthen the restorative justice initiatives in our court systems. I'm going to free all of these black people, black men who are serving time for marijuana while their white counterparts are making millions of dollars on the marijuana industry right now. Lie to me, right? Say that. And I would have, man, I would be giving all my money to the Harris campaign right now. But they're not saying any of that.
Well, so I can come up with any number of political strategy reasons why none of those things would fly.
Of
And
course.
and
I,
and
I,
and,
I can too.
and I know you can. And and so here's this balancing act between trying to pull together, and I think this is at the heart of the pluralist question, at the
Mm,
heart of liberalism.
hmm.
Harris needs not just an African American, pretty liberal Presbyterian minister and a
Right.
white American, pretty liberal Jewish rabbi.
Hmm.
Harris needs, you know, union workers with who, are leaning towards Trump. Harris needs
He,
soccer moms. Harris needs,
yeah.
uh, and Harris needs those people who
Yeah.
who have lives very different from ours. And Harris, as I recently heard in a really excellent analysis by Evan Osnos, who's a writer for the New Yorker and a super politically sort of insightful guy. He did a deep read on Harris. He said Harris is a Northern Californian politician from the Bay Area in the mold of Nancy Pelosi.
Hmm.
Now, what's special about the two of them plus Dianne Feinstein is and why, and my theory on why you get San Francisco politicians who go national but not New York City politicians who go national is
Mm,
because San Francisco
interesting.
politicians need to balance so many interests and
That makes
money.
sense. That makes sense.
And the balancing of those interests includes many people and coalitions who are not the money interest. So they're
Mm,
still balancing a money interest that's separate from the LGBTQ plus
right.
population, the
Right.
African American population, the Hispanic American population, the Asian American population, the Catholic American population,
Hmm.
right? All of that is present in the Bay Area, and not a single one of them you can't win with one of them. You
Exactly.
have to win with them all.
That's right.
So so here we have this tension. Harris cannot be a single trumpet choir on a cause. Harris has to hit all the notes
Yeah.
from jazz to classical to
Yeah.
R&B to
Yeah.
hard rock to punk, the whole deal, and
I mean,
and dance with hip hop.
and then yeah. Well, I mean, that's what Obama did. That's how Obama did it. He
It
appealed to a broad audience.
He did, and now he's being And then, okay, so here's the
Is
problem.
a problem, right?
Why? Obama's the worst person,
The
therefore, to talk to
worst
black men.
person. Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
you know, he is consummate politician, but not a niche population figure.
Exactly. And so
And
even he meant well, but because of the baggage that he had, well, not let me not say baggage, because like you said, because of his political profile, it tainted his attempt because he's not known for that. He ran on this whole idea of I am not an African American president, I'm an American president who happens to be black.
right.
And people bought that because it appealed to a broader audience. But now you're putting Obama in a room full of black men and you're asking him to be a black man. And it's like, no, that's not what we know him for. We know him as the American president who happens to be black.
And so here we get to the heart of Gopnik's challenge to us.
Mm,
Our premises, we started this conversation with our premises that we come out of this, which
yeah.
is everybody has the right to exist. Everybody has the right to exist. It means also, as my father, may his memory be for a blessing, quoting my mother, said, also, everybody has the right to their own stupid opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Everybody has an opinion and they all, yeah.
Right. And if that's the case, as a political party with that as a premise, in battle with a political party that doesn't share that premise,
Mm,
right? We're no longer in a good faith conversation in a liberal democracy. We are in a conversation between those who are in support of a very, very lowercase l liberal, very, very lowercase d democracy,
mm-hmm.
and those who are against it, who
Mm-hmm.
do not believe everyone has the right to exist.
Right. Right.
And if somebody believes not everybody has the right to exist, only my group does, then I get to lie to
Right.
everybody.
Right. And they'll take it.
And because it doesn't matter, because I'm starting off on the premise that my people have a right, that your people don't, and all I need to do is get my people to vote.
That's dangerous populism. It's dangerous.
But that is the heart of this controversy, and why it feels so existential.
Mm,
The first election in which I could vote was that Dukakis Bush election.
I remember that.
And take take eternal pity on my college roommate, my freshman college roommate, Zsolt Tolgesi, who, God bless him, is still my good friend, Hungarian American, not yet an American, who he and I share a dorm room with one other guy, and I am a dedicated, zealous reader of the New York Times opinion page. And the future of my future as a preaching person is forged in that fall as I come cross campus at Middlebury College in Vermont in the fall with the paper in my hand folded like New Yorkers fold it, so I can only reading a quarter page, screaming, pounding the table, the words of the opinion page at my poor Hungarian friend.
Mm,
Who at a certain point or another said, "You cannot read anything else to me." Only he said it like
yeah.
this: "No more reading to me, John." But this is the case. We are. That was not a life or death election.
No, it
That was
wasn't.
not existential. I felt
No,
it was because I was 18 and everything was existential.
everything's actually, yeah,
But the country survived George H.W. Bush
yeah. Well, because it wasn't so much at stake during those times.
because George H.W. Bush participated in the project that we call liberal democracy and was an institutionalist and didn't want to tear it down.
Exactly. I mean, I was having the same conversation with one of my colleagues. They respected the position. They respected the system. They use the system as they used it, but at the end of the day, they respected it. And so there was no crisis in a sense, because at the end of the day, there was the sacred cow that would never be slaughtered, right? And the sacred documents, the Constitution, and all of that stuff were sacred. And so we can play around with it, we can talk about it, we can hit it, but we're not going to touch it, because these are the things that are foundational and fundamental to our political process. Now, all of that stuff is up for sale. The documents is up for sale. Our
Everything,
democracy is up for sale. All of it. The system is up for sale.
the whole thing.
The whole thing is up for sale now. And so it is an existential crisis. Yeah.
So, all right, with that positive note,
Yay. Yay, America.
uh, we'll give everybody the opportunity. I'm sure our lovely participants have some comments and thoughts. So we're going to give them the opportunity to say things. You're going to hide
Good,
behind the book.
good. No, good book. Really
You
good
haven't
book.
read the book.
If you
Everybody,
haven't read it, you can borrow my copy, because it's a good book. I can't not, I can't finish this conversation without saying this was a great book. I can tear it to shreds, but I will put it back together again to read it again. It's a good book. It's a good book.
it is an excellent book.
Yeah.
I have read it and listened to it multiple times at this point.
Yes.
So,
Yep.
um, and Adam Gopnik reads it, and it is available through my favorite app, Libby.
Eh,
Yes.
yep.
Uh, and I borrowed it instantaneously, so there's no wait for it because obviously our reviews haven't made it out there.
That's right. That's right. I use Libby all the time, by the way. So
Well, we
it's
are
good.
big supporters of the library.
Yes, we
If
are.
you have
Yes, we are.
if you haven't taken advantage of our Erie County public libraries, they are awesome.
They're good. They're
Uh,
good.
in fact, Chris Castro, who's on, and I met at the library once by chance. Uh, Nobody's coming on to talk to us. We've
Nobody.
answered all their
I
questions.
think we've solved all the problems of the world.
So I have allowed you to. You should be able to. Oh, sorry, I didn't. There we go.
There
Now
you
you
go.
can. I apologize. There we go.
Yeah, so I just requested the book for 2 weeks from today from asked them to purchase it at the library. So time for next
Excellent, Chris.
time. But I do keep requesting books from the library that I hear about or read about or whatever.
I know, Chris, you are, I think, one of the only people who reads significantly more than I do.
I don't know about that, but I read a lot.
And so, what did you think of our conversation today?
No, I thought it was a good conversation. I did not finish Gopnik's book before we started. I'm still at the beginning parts of the why liberal or why leftists hate liberals. But I thought that he does a good job of recognizing that the criticisms from both the right and the left are not unreasonable. That they provide not, I won't say guidance necessarily, but they provide a thing to think about in terms of, what ought we to do with this, that, or the other thing. But
Yeah, I think you're right. I think he is sympathetic to the idea that um, there that liberalism ought to work better from everybody's perspective on the one hand, and that especially from progressives. So right from the left, the real question is why aren't things better, and from the right, it's why are things too loose, and that the looseness is part of the problem. Right, that liberalism isn't working because it's not traditional enough. And um, and it's not values driven enough or all of these things and those are hard for those of us who are at heart pluralist to swallow. You know, so I think I think his offering of that sympathy, and I think the Canadian context is really worthwhile. And if you know, and he brings that in a way that's very helpful. I highly recommend, if you haven't, if none of you listen to Amicus, which is Dahlia Lithwick's podcast on the Supreme Court. I highly recommend it, but I very much recommend this episode. This episode is I just put it in the chat. This episode is how the American Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, needs to learn from other cultures, and the person who speaks on it. So Dahlia Lithwick happens to be a Jewish person who lives in Charlottesville, Virginia, but she has on Canadian Supreme Court Justice Rosalie Silberman Abella, who is an astounding person, like super interesting. And so I highly recommend this interview with her. And enough said. Other thoughts, Tay or Allison?
Oh, I was talking to somebody here. No, I really appreciate your presentations, and what is sticking with me is that eventually and patience are unacceptable in terms of everybody being a real person who doesn't have to wait. I'm really stressed about the election. I write postcards. My kids are going door to door, writing postcards, you know, doing a lot. So I guess we do everything we can and hope for the best. And we thank you for bringing forth so many of the things that matter. And thank you very much.
Oh, well, thank you. Couldn't do it without all of you. Otherwise, it would just be Pastor Hughes and I talking to ourselves.
Well, I'm glad that you reminded me. I do have the book, Adam Gopnik's book, but I haven't read it, so I will have to get into it.
Well, fortunately, it's
I like his books in general, but
Yeah.
I'll get into that one.
Fortunately, it's a quick read, and it's you know, not like, look, I realize I have recommended some longer books before, but but this one is a snap, and more importantly, I feel like
I'm still trying to parse my way through that one. Thanks.
my pleasure.
So it may be short in terms of pages, but I think that it's pretty dense, and there's a lot of stuff in it that makes it not like, you know, a beach read.
Makes it heavy, yeah.
I will confess that I am not a normal reader, as my household accuses me of all the time. So, you know, basically, our almost 11-year-old or a 17-year-old will come home with you know, some tome that they've heard about and hand it to Ginny, and Ginny will say, "That's very nice. I'm sure your father will read it."
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Barb, great to see you.
You too. Actually, this I want to address to Reverend Hughes.
Please.
Apparently you did not listen to Kamala's interview with Charlemagne the God, because she said everything that you said you wished she would say. Every single one of those things she addressed.
Then I'm going to have to check that out.
You are. It was extremely impressive, and she got amazing reviews. Amazing reviews. But that was just yesterday.
Okay.
Well, and Charlemagne the God, I think, is a far better person to talk to Black men, in my totally uneducated, not Black man perspective,
Yes.
than President Obama.
I would completely agree.
Yeah, and he, you know, and he had other people asking questions, and they asked really tough questions of her, and she answered them very directly. She did not skirt the issue at all, which was amazing. It was very impressive. Anyways,
I'm gonna search for that.
Yeah.
Oh,
And if
yeah.
you disagree, let me know.
Yeah.
I'm sure you
think
will.
you think Reverend Hughes is going to have trouble expressing his disagreement?
No, no way.
So
The other thing I wanted to bring up was that you were talking about, appealing to deep emotions, and you were talking about decreasing cruelty. And one of the things that comes to mind, and then you were talking about fear, and I said, I think that white supremacists fear that not so much the equality, but, well, I guess it is equality, but that then those people, once they've been given equality, will turn around and treat them the same way that they have treated
absolutely, Barbara.
others.
I think
Others.
that's really an excellent point to end on,
Hmm.
which is at the heart of this question is that people who are unwilling to engage in a good faith conversation about how to reduce cruelty do
Mm.
not believe that in a situation where everyone is equal, they will not be treated as badly as they treated
That's
other
it.
people.
That
Exactly.
is it. That
Yep.
is it.
So with that, I think first of all, that's an excellent place to lead into fearless speech, which is our next time, because one of the things that the author does in that book, and it just came out like today. So, and it just came out on Audible yesterday.
The people in audio.
So, and she talks about the difference between fearless speech and reckless speech. And reckless speech being that encourages the damage of other people. And that is all too often what we have defended under the guise of free speech in this country. That inciting violence against other people is reckless speech as opposed to fearless speech, which is speaking truth to power. And that we ought to be protecting the fearless speech and restricting the reckless speech. Yes,
to
Pastor
quote
Hughes.
to quote the rapper Ice-T from his 1989 album, freedom of what did he say? He said, freedom of speech, watch what you say.
Amen to that.
And I think that is a perfect, go listen to that album on on YouTube back in '89. Oh my God, one of the first one of the first commercial hip hop artists to sign to a major record label. And that was a song that he came out with. It was a rap song. It was all about, the whole album was about how we talk about freedom, but what does it really mean to be free, right?
Those prepositions count.
They count. They matter. They matter. So I'm
So on
excited
that note,
about this book.
thank you all for being here. I know each and every one of you supports us through both our Patreon account and by making donations through opendoorjudaism.org. Thank you for those of you who do. If you are listening to this or watching this now or in the future, whenever it may be, please check out our website. That's again opendoorjudaism.org. Our next session will be 2 weeks from today, Wednesday, October 30th, on fearless speech. So we will be talking about fearless speech and what I like to call good faith speech in good faith, when we actually show up in a way of accepting that our partner actually has a right to exist, to use our new terminology. And again, feel free to contact me. I will send out another email with a link to register for our for the Talmud class that starts next Tuesday. And oh, thank you, Pastor Hughes, for putting the what Facebook link did you put in the
It wasn't supposed to be Facebook, but for some reason it came up as Facebook. I don't know. Hold on one second.
It's that's this week's event. I will share next 2 weeks from now. We have a different link, but same Zoom link. So our
Same Zoom
Zoom
link.
link will not change. Somebody, Rose Meyerowitz, tried to sign on to our old Zoom link today, and I wasn't able to get to her in time because it was only at 12:44. So I apologize to all those. Oh, is that our, oh, that's the YouTube link
The
for,
YouTube link, yeah. Freedom of speech, what you say.
excellent. Oh, thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So with that, thank you all for being here. We have only 3 weeks
I know.
before this election. And I wish us all blessings of strength and fortitude. May we hold it together. May we find good ways to appeal emotionally to one another. And Pastor Hughes, you've got something to say.
I have something to announce. With my colleague Alan Foster here at the church, we are organizing a evening of prayer, a service of prayer the night before the election. All in the community are welcome. There will be more information to come, so just stay tuned. But we're putting it together today. We're going to put some press out there, but we really want to take an opportunity for us to come together as citizens of this country. It's not about partisanship. It's not about who you vote for. It's about being reminded that we are people of faith, but we are also we're supposed to be decent people. You know what I mean? And we need prayer. We need prayer. We need to pray for the people who are working in these polls. There's concern about security and safety when you go to the voting booth, which is unheard of. Why are we worried about our safety going to vote? So we need prayer. And
We need
so,
prayer. We need to pray for the safety of FEMA workers.
yes, the FEMA workers in North Carolina, like they're suffering right now.
Yeah.
They're making a debate about how much money they should get. Anyway, we need prayer. We need prayer. So
And we need prayer that leads to good action.
to good action.
And to changing our good hearts, to making them into able and good hands and feet.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
with that,
Amen.
thank you all so much. We really appreciate all of you, and we look forward to our next conversation. And until then, health and well-being to everybody. Take care.
Yeah.
Take care.
Yeah.
Thank you.